Welcome back, guys. So we have pushed ahead a little bit from where we left off. So we've got the aircraft painted. So we've got both upper and lower surfaces nicely painted, wheels on, a few touch-ups done. On the whole, really happy how the aircraft has turned out. It's had a coat of Tamiya X35 semi-gloss varnish all over the seal and the decals. I have gotten the propellers painted up. It's the center boss is painted with Citadel Games Workshop chainmail, which is a really old paint. I can't remember what they call it now, but we've got Tamiya X3, I think it is yellow, XF3 yellow on the outer tips, and then it's XF18, and again it's got semi-gloss varnish all over it once the decals are dried. And then we have the drop tanks done, so they're just all over sky, decal on and gland varnish, and then the bombs are NATO green, probably not the right colour, but close enough for government work. And again, XF3 for the yellow HE marking stripe. That was just brush painted on. Going to paint a little bit of silver on the forward end of the bomb for the Armin fuser armour. We'll do that once we've weathered them up. And then obviously we've gotten all the ancillary wheel well bits, Bombay doors and such like, all painted up, ready for weathering. So, weathering, how are we going to approach this? Well, I think first off, we're going to look at doing a simple oil-based pin wash. And for oils, I am using Abtalong 502, and it's just a grime mixed, lightened up with a little bit of, I think it's smoke. It comes out to be just in an old Tamiya bottle that's been cleaned out, so you can see it's just a grey brown sludge. Applicate a brush, if I can find my oil. I usually keep them separate than my usual painting brushes, so keep them wrapped up separate in a piece of towel. And what I like to put the oil pin washes on with is just a simple Daler and Rowley liner number 1 synthetic bristle brush. So I use the oil paints as the main pigments, and then for the reducer thinner I use Winsor & Newton Sansador. You can also use AK Interactive odorless thinners, and I do have, not on my desk, but I also have some turpentine, artist's turpentine. So it's low odor turpentine, and it's basically a highly refined version that is a really, actually turpentine's a really nice carrier agent for oil paints, but sometimes can be a little harsh on acrylics, depending on how robust they are, shall we say. So I'm just giving this just a general stir up, just to get that, you know, as with most paints, the pigment will separate from the carrier a little bit. So you just want to give it a stir, so you end up getting a nice, even, free-flowing paint. And then what we need to do is we just pick a point and start. So we may as well just start the wing root. It's actually still a blobby brush. So make sure you don't have any big lumps of paint on your brush. If you need, get yourself a bit of a kitchen towel, something you can just rub off the coarse bits, so you just end up with fine pigment in solution. So once we've got that, then we just pick a point, touch, and run it down the pan lines. And you might have a mild panic thinking, oh my goodness me, I'm destroying my model, but you're not actually. All you're doing is laying down a different type of paint from the acrylic, so it won't reactivate the acrylic, but what it will do is when it sets up, it will dry in the panel line and it will enhance the panel line. Now, some people like to go for a black all over black wash. I actually think that's can be a little harsh. I prefer using this sort of grey brown colour, and I'll modulate that depending on the tones I'm going over. The particular brown and greens we've got can handle a reasonably dark colour, but black would be too stark. You can see it's kind of like this dirt grain brown colour as it's going down on the wing. If we just get the reflection off it, there you go. And we're just going to chase all the panel lines, and then we'll leave it dry. It'll take about 20 minutes to half an hour. I usually work on each surface at a time, so I'll work on the top surfaces, let it dry, clean it off. When I'm happy with the top surfaces, I then move to the lower surfaces. And it could be vice versa. Sometimes I'll maybe start with the underside of an aircraft. Just depends what takes my fancy. Right, today for filming, it's just as easy to start on the top surfaces. So the general idea is just to go all over the airframe and apply this oil wash. And you want to make sure you get enough down that there'll be enough pigment left in the panel lines when you clean it off. However, if you think you've gone overboard cleaning it off and stripped too much pigment out of it, you can just go back in and refill that panel line. Some lines might be slightly deeper as others, so you'll get a little bit of variance in the paint itself. Just move that out of the way. And you do need to move the aircraft around just so you can get all the panel lines. Now, some folk, when they're doing this, they just cover the whole panel. You do need to be careful. Depending on the varnish you've used, will depend on how much of the paint will adhere to the surface. So if you put it all over, then you can run the risk of using the paint acting like a filter and changing permanently the hue of the paint, which in some circumstances is fine. That might be what you're looking to achieve. But in some circumstances it's maybe not what you're looking to achieve. So I think less is usually more in these circumstances. But so long as you've sealed your paint with a good quality varnish, then you should have no problem using a dissimilar paint product to weather it up without being permanent, and you should be able to come in with a cloth soaked with a bit of mineral spirits and just clean it all away. So there's the general gist. What I'm going to do is just pause the film at the moment. I'll get all the panel line wash on the aircraft, and then when it's dry we'll come back and have a look at me taking it off, and then we'll look at the underside. So we'll just see you in a moment. So we've got the whole aircraft done, and I just crashed on same colour, and we've done the underside. It's been sitting for about half an hour roughly. So it's gone off. It's not totally dry, it's dry enough for what we need. So what we need to do is we need to start thinking about removing it. So support the wing with your gloved hand, and we're just going to take a gentle rub back and forth, roughly in the direction of the airflow. You should be able to see that the pan lines have taken on board the colour. Now, because it's not a stark black, we're getting a really nice subtle finish on the pan lines. It's maybe not as dark on the green as it is on the brown, but it's pretty good. Now what we can do is, if we want to darken it up on the green, we can actually mix up a slightly darker mix, come back over the green, and just gently put the pan lines in. Again, now, as this is just the first stage of weathering, we don't want to overdo it. So straight away though, I think you can see that we've got, compared to the other side, we've already getting this pan lines accentuated. You're getting a little bit of residual marking around the pan lines, which is helping with that tonal variation, and it's just adding to the overall finish. So what I'm going to do, this is easier done off the camera as it is on camera, is just use the same technique. You can see it coming off on the tissue. We're going to clean off the whole airframe, and then we're going to come back and we're going to look at doing some oil rendering, and if need be we'll touch in some of these pan lines again with a darker oil paint. I'm also going to do at the same time, whilst I've got the oil paint, we'll do the Bombay doors inside and out, and the wheel well doors, and anything else. Try and get the base colour all the same before we start moving to other colours. So back in a moment. Right, so we're back, and as you can see, been in and we've wiped away all of the pan line wash, and I think you can see it's very subtle, but we've got all the pan lines highlighted, and we've increased the tonal variation on the surface of the airframe, and we've also increased the weathering on the panels. There's a little bit of the wash stuck in some of the texture on the satin varnish, and it's just worked with the tonal variation we put in with the airbrush to give us a more interesting model. Now on the underside, in the Bombay especially, obviously it's a bit more tricky to get the bulk of the wash out, and plus we've got all these little areas here where wash is stuck in, and it's just a little too heavily grimy for me, so we need to get that sorted out. Now I have a very old number 6 flat shade Dale & Rowley. You can see it's very, very worn, but it's perfect for weathering work. So with a little bit of AK Interactive odorless thinners, just touch and let the thinners wick onto the brush, and then on a bit of kitchen towel you want to get the bulk of the thinners out of the brush, and then we can go in and we can start just wicking away the bulk of the wash, leaving in the recesses. And then what we can also do is we can move it around and use it to put a bit of grime in the Bombay. Every now and again you want to go back into the wet spot on the paper towel just to clear away the pigment, that's the excess pigment. Otherwise you'll not be able to lift any of it away. They'll just move it and move it and move it. You'll never get any cleaner spots. Now the beauty with oil paints is they do take a while to dry. Admittedly, this is quite an old wash I made up months ago, so it dries quicker as a new wash. but you can reactivate it over a week or so. So if you do it one night and then come back and think, oh, it's still too heavy, you can come back in and move it again. What you can do is also, as you can pick up from other areas where you've taken too much wash off. So for example, we've still got quite a bit in here. We can go in there, pick some wash up from there, and then transfer it to over here. Now I'm using little stabbing motions to try and get as random as possible, like a random pattern in the Bombay. So just go in gently. It's almost like the reverse of dry brushing, where you want to leave the wash in the recesses to increase the shadows and clear off the tops to give you a bit of a highlight. Constantly cleaning the excess off your brush. And working lightly. Different directions. You might get a little bit of residue from the paper towel, or even if you've got clumped up pigment, you can go in and blow it away. Then when you're happy, go in with a little stabby movements, just as a blending technique. I think it's called stippling, if I remember rightly. It's a really good blending technique to give you a random sort of finish. There we go. There's the Bombay done. Looks nice and grimy. Take a bit more thinners, clean the brush again. And then we'll just go back in, touch again with a slightly wetter brush. Any areas it's got thick pigment in, just lift it out. Clean the brush. You can stab and drag if you want to lift a bit more paint away or a bit more pigment away. There we go. Now on the recesses we're struggling to get with the paper towel, all you do is just run the brush in the direction of the airflow. And you just want to do it gently because you don't want to remove too much, otherwise you'll end up with a light spot. Just want to remove the areas of heavy pigmentation so it blends in nicely with the rest of the model. And if you need to, you can just do a bit of stab and stippling here as well, just to blend in your brush strokes. There we go. And it's a very quick and easy technique to do. And it's a good one to learn because it's like a base weathering technique basically, because this is the primary one. This is one I always do first. Always do pan line washes first, and that kind of gives you an idea of what you're looking at, because it helps, you know, unify the paint surface after all the different tonal variation and the varnish has gone down. It helps give you an idea of where you're going with your weathering. And it's a safe technique because it can always be undone. And I like safety in my modelling. I don't want to do something I can't undo, or it ends up creating me a lot of work to undo. It's nice to be able just to do something and look back in about 10 minutes and say, yep, that looks good. Right, that's given me a good base. Where do we go from here? And where we're going to go from here is to start doing some oil rendering, and we'll actually do, you know, individual panel lines. So individual panels, we'll pick them out. We can do some shading, we can do some highlighting. Anything we want. And again, that's the beauty of the modelling. It is our model, so we can weather it however we like it. they're satisfied, well, that's when we stop. You can see there, I'm just doing a little bit of stippling. That helps blend away the brush marks. And you just stipple it into a panel. Yeah. And the underside of these aircrafts, they will have gotten dirty. You know, they might be operating off a grass strip or a strip near the coast that's got a lot of salt spray and debris on it. So don't be frightened to put a little bit of muck on the bottom of the aircraft. And when you're using a safe technique like this, now's the time to experiment as well. There we go. So I think I'm getting to the point where I'm reasonably happy with that. I'm just going to heat the front of the Bombay. Again, just stippling. The central piece. There we go, and the end of the Bombay. Right. Turn the kit over, and there we go. I think that's the base weathering done. If you think there's any areas on here that need a bit more blending, you can always blend on top. Good. Right, I think I'm happy with that. I'll just tidy in here right at the wing root. That can sometimes be a difficult place to get. Yep. And then just check that you've not left any streaks on the side of the fuselage. You can see there, just where we've done the wing root, and there's a little bit on the side. So we can just get a paper towel and give that a pretty rub. There we go. Right, so I'm happy with that. Now the one thing that does happen sometimes, and that's purely because paints are thin. See if I can zoom this in a little bit. Right. If I use this as a pointer, you can see there's been a little bit of paint rub through. So all you need to do there is just get a little bit of the base paint on your brush and touch that in, and it'll be fine. So that's a job I can do next. But what I do when we've gotten to this stage is I will leave 24 hours for the weathering I have done just to dry off, get a grip of the model, and then we can come back with some oil paints and we can look to do a little bit more weathering, certainly in here where the boots are going to go, fuel stains are going to go. In the meantime as well, I'm also going to go do the pin washing on these panels because I've not done them yet. It's always good to do them the same colour as the aircraft just to keep it all together, the tone together. So we'll let this dry. I'll get these done and we'll come back when it's all had a chance to dry off, and we'll start looking at the oil weathering, and we're getting very close to start peeling off the canopy masks and getting this aircraft finished with. So see you soon.